Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I like. For this episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episodes of Elementary, as well as the latest episode of Banshee. Starting off with Elementary, we had a back-to-back episode this week, and the first episode was about a real estate lady named Lynn who had got shot and came to Sherlock and Watson trying to find out, what happened to her. Obviously, she was able to track them down because she says, she has a connection to Minecraft. Essentially, she's saying that her and Minecraft had a thing. I mean, it was more of a sexual relationship, which kind of stirs up things with Watson because it bothers her. I mean, for one, Watson doesn't, Joan doesn't believe her. She's like, there's something about this lady. She's holding stuff back. So she's a little untrustworthy, as well as the fact is the whole Minecraft thing, bothers her. It irks her. And I love the entire time they're talking and everything. And it's just she looks like she's so annoyed by her because the lady's there just like smacking on food in front of her and like hearing her ear when she's trying to work, as well as, asking all these personal questions about her. Which in the end you end up finding out makes perfect sense because she turns out to be Joan's half sister, which is a very interesting twist. I didn't see that coming. That was pretty neat. It explains why she was getting all personal with Joan. Was like, oh, you used to be a surgeon, but now you're a detective. Asking all these personal questions like that. I was like, huh. Because I knew something was a little fishy, but it's I didn't expect that. But the case I like how the case ended up being taken over by the NSA. Because essentially, because Lynn was running, her illegal poker game, and basically they got robbed. I mean, essentially, she thought, a lot of the people involved in the game thought she did it, especially one of the particular people in her game actually went out of his way to almost attempt to kill her, which is kind of interesting because it's we didn't really get to learn what happened to him, did we? I don't think it was brought up in the episode, but it's he tried to kill a lady, but I mean, he was probably dealt with. It probably was kind of done off screen, so. But it ended up being that the three people that were behind it were essentially were they Turkish spies or something like that. They're spies from somewhere, and they basically wanted to rob one of the people that was there at the poker game. It was this guy who works at this, it's like a computer techie company, and basically he had all his hard drives are connected to communications all across the world. So they made a copy of a key to his room so they could get access to that communications. The NSA shut Sherlock down because at one point, Sherlock went to visit two of the suspects, and those two suspects, along with their boss, was going to run the next day. And the NSA guy is like, you should have you should be. Nice going. Now they're warned. Your visit warned them, and now they're going to go off. And it's well, how Sherlock is. He doesn't let stuff go. If you had just told him from the beginning what you were doing, he would have happily helped you out. Not happily, because he doesn't like the NSA, especially particularly this guy. He kind of hates him just because of the way he does things. But it was if you know how he is, if you just worked from the beginning, it would have saved you a lot of trouble. But he ended up capturing them. She even told them her boss's name. I mean, granted, she didn't tell them. The NSA guy made her write it down because, not everyone in this room needs to know that. But Sherlock did note how she was moving the pen and was essentially saying how, he, I guess, could make out what name she was writing. So it makes you wonder, is that going to come up later on? Or are we going to meet the boss, her boss later on in this, in this season or something? Or is that just kind of a one-off thing? It's something he noticed, but it's not going to come. I mean, I don't know, because this show does tend to make stuff, that might seem irrelevant in one episode. It's a relevant thing, but it kind of makes you think oh, that's something that's not going to bear fruit. But then later on, it's oh, it actually affected something later down the road. So that was kind of interesting. But the main focus of it was finding out that Lynn is Joan's half-sister. That's actually a bit part of the second episode, which I'm trying to think, was there anything else I want to talk about in the first episode? No. I mean, except for that thing where Sherlock was trying to open up his senses because he was basically working on another case, which I thought was very interesting at the beginning. It's a case that basically, what was it? Wine was basically being replaced by piss or something like that. Basically, they were trying to find out whether the people that were, these wine people, whether they were being duped or were they purposely selling, crappy product. And basically their kitchen smelled like piss and a combination of other things. And he was jumping on a trampoline to open up his senses. And he talked about the fact is it was helping him, trying to prevent him from getting sick because Joan was about to get sick. She's like, I'm not about to get sick. And at the end of the episode, she ended up, sneezing. So I was like, okay, you are getting sick. So he kind of called that. So I'm transitioning into the second half of the episode. Like I said, a big part of it dealt with Joan and Lynn. Because for her, finding out she has a half sister brought up a lot of stuff because, her dad was in the situation he was in. He was schizophrenic. And, it bothered her on a level because it's like, dad left us. We thought like, okay, maybe having a family was too much for him. It's like, no, he went off and started another family. He may not have been there the entire time, but he spent a good amount of years there. So it's like, what was wrong with us that he felt abandoned? He felt like he could abandon us. And it kind of shakes her a little bit. And she asked Linda more about it, but Lynn doesn't kind of want anything to do with her. Because Joan actually went behind her back and talked to Lynn's mom, and Lynn got super pissed and said some crap like, your dad, he came back to us talking about how you guys replaced him, Joan's mom got remarried, Joan's stepdad, and how he hated them. And it's just like, wow, that was not cool. And Sherlock even was like, you were crying once. It's like, no, I wasn't crying. Just basically it's like examining her eyes and everything, saying it's not the cold that you're getting or the allergies you're having. And she's basically like, I don't want to talk about it. But it's like, that shit probably like really shook her. Like she had on some level knew she was lying, but still the thought of that still messed with her. And it's like, oh, knowing that she was like whether she was full on crying, but she was probably tearing up hearing that, and it's kind of breaks your heart hearing that. Luckily, Lynn came back and apologized. They kind of both apologized. Lynn apologized for what he said because their dad never came back, and he probably never knew about her mom getting remarried. But Joan apologized too, saying like, I shouldn't have went to your mom without your permission. So it's really nice. It's just 'cause like I said, it's just Lynn had her situation because. To Lynn, it's like she got to know him, but he left, But at the same time, it's like Joan never really got the chance to know him. He up and left their family to start their family. So, both of them are a little messed up. But by the end of the episode, they decided, like, okay, we're going to work, we're going to slowly build up our relationship and, figure this out. And it's kind of like, oh, that's family stuff. It's beautiful. I hope we get to see more of her throughout the season. Throughout the series, actually. So. But there is a different case. It's not the same case in the first episode. The second episode is a completely different case where we have a lady named Phoebe getting killed. So essentially in this episode, Phoebe was a part of a picture. She took a selfie that went kind of somewhat viral. It got popular because there was essentially an artist who took people's selfies off the internet and he basically sold them as art. He enlarged them and then sold them for art, which typically crime dramas is usually based off of stuff in real life. I remember hearing a story I was watching a video a long time ago where they talked about an artist who did that. Like he took people's selfies off the internet and sold them as art for crazy amounts of money. I'm pretty sure he was getting sued a lot too, but it's like, how do you, that's kind of crazy doing something like that, taking someone else's picture and selling it quote unquote art. It's just, I don't know, it's weird, but that's essentially what happened in this episode. And basically the picture, granted this picture was stolen and replaced, but the reason why Phoebe got killed is because this original picture proved that this guy named Lewis, who was sentenced to life in prison for murdering this high school girl, not high school, a college girl, the girl he was in college with that he was kind of stalking, he was obsessed with. But, he believes he was framed by the cops, and, this whole development with the whole picture, it made him kind of second guess him being guilty. At the end of it all, we ended up finding out that it was essentially a big cover up because there was a lady that worked in the forensic lab that she kind of had a bit of a hero complex. She wanted to help out the cops, which is kind of interesting. She kind of considered, she's like, we kind of work alongside the cops. We're, we help you, it's like, getting a confession and all that stuff, it's, when you got your guy, but, they need more hard evidence. So they need stuff like DNA results. So fudging them a little bit isn't a problem because, I'm helping the cops, but it's like, no, you're hurting a lot of people because she's done this for God knows how long. Like, they even said it, like, there's probably hundreds of her cases that have to be reopened and looked at because who knows. Granted, yeah, she might have gotten the right people some of the time, but in this case, we see that Lewis was innocent, so she sent an innocent man to jail, so there's no telling how many people she sent to jail. Like I said, it's very interesting because no matter how much she wants to say she's doing it for the right reasons, at the end of the day, because, even Sherlock said himself, like, she wanted to be a hero, she wanted to be special, so she had a bit of a hero complex, but essentially, a combination of her, changing the DNA, because it ended up being that the first victim, Phoebe, was friends with this victim who had died 3 years ago that Lewis had gotten and, went to jail for her murder. Essentially, Phoebe ended up, finding out, because she saw the enlarged picture at the, like, art exhibit and whatnot, it got her looking into it. And basically the killers were a DA and her wife, because essentially the college girl that died was having an affair with this, she's not a DA, she's a prosecutor, was having an affair with her, and her wife found out and confronted her and killed her, and her prosecutor wife covered the whole thing up because she went to that particular lab lady to cover up the evidence. So it's kind of sad. I mean, because there was that moment where the wife tried to take the blame for both crimes because, Phoebe getting killed too, but it ended up being the prosecutor was the one who actually killed Phoebe, so. Very interesting twist. One of my favorite lines in the episode was that lady, one of the suspects, she's like, I couldn't have killed anyone. I'm a vegan. It's like, what is that supposed to mean? Vegans don't kill people? It's like, I guess it's like, yeah, because we don't eat animals, we're non-violent. So it's like, no, any person could be a killer. It's not, because even Detective Bell kind of gave her an eye, like, kind of raised eyebrow, like, okay, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? I just love that. Like, that's supposed to make you not innocent. And I also love at the very end when Sherlock kind of figured it out. He came back home and was looking through the files. She's like, oh, you figured it out already. Who did it? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, don't worry. I already figured it out myself. I found the file you're looking for 20 minutes ago. It's like, ooh, look at Joan one-upping Sherlock like that. So, really nice episodes back to back. Like I said, I really love the fact that we found out Joan has a half sister. It's a very interesting development. I love that whole story, like that whole family connection, because we don't get too many looks at Joan's family. We've gotten little bits and pieces here and there, and it also brought up a lot of stuff about Sherlock and Minecraft, because it kind of brought up comparisons between the two, because it's like Joan's like, for better or worse, at the very least, you had Minecraft, you had each other growing up. Which, the way they talk about each other, it kind of makes it seem like it was for worse. But, the fact that she had a sister out there, she grew up not knowing her, so. I really like the fact is, at the point when, in the first half of the episode, when they were talking about, oh yeah, like, cause she had made it seem like her and Joan were two-time, like, dating Minecraft at the same time. I mean, granted, obviously, if you've seen the episode, you know that she was lying about that. But, it was very interesting because she kind of said that just to plain annoy Joan, because she said she had looked it up online about Minecraft and Joan having dated, which is kind of messed up. It's like you using her quote unquote dead boyfriend. We know he's not dead. Those two know he's not dead, but it's like most of the world doesn't know that he's still alive. Most of the world thinks he's dead. So it's a little messed up for you to be using her dead boyfriend as a way to, squirm your way into her life. Granted, she said the only reason why she went to Joan in the first place because she was desperate for help. It's like on some level you wanted to get to know her and you used this as an excuse. You probably could have went to anyone else. Granted, you couldn't have gone to the cops about the whole illegal poker thing, but you know what I mean. But basically what I was getting at was the fact is that Sherlock pointed out, it's like, if my brother was two-timing you, it's like, at the very least, I warned you, my brother isn't perfect, he has his flaws. I mean, he has webbed toes, for goodness sake, and she had his webbed toe. Very interesting that he points out something even, she didn't know. Granted, they didn't really, I don't know, it's very interesting because it's not like they really dated for a long time, because, that's why the whole thing bothered Jones. Because personally, I didn't think Minecraft seemed like the two-timing type, and no wonder. But you could tell it definitely pissed like Joan off because, it's not just the fact that she lied about it, but it's just like because she used Minecraft like one of the few people like, Joan deeply cared about. It was very interesting because she went out of her way to get in contact with Minecraft, not directly, but indirectly, to get a message out to him about this lady, Lynn. It's like, yeah. But that shows you how far of her way she went on. Granted, it wasn't just for an emotional reason why she contacted him, because she knew Lynn was lying about something. She had to find out what it was. Because Joan's kind of become like Sherlock, where she kind of has to, once she sees a puzzle, she kind of has to figure it out. So now moving on to this week's episode of Banshee, where we get a little bit more look at Rebecca's time before she died. Like particularly in this episode, I think it was like 3 months ago. At the beginning, we see her entering the hospital. She's a little banged up, but we find out what that whole situation was. Apparently, she was doing some shady stuff again. Like, we've already seen, Rebecca was basically making a deal with some guys, too, who were making meth. I think that was they were making meth. They weren't supposed to sell in Banshee, because them selling in Banshee meant that they were encroaching on Proctor's business. And, her uncle finds out that'd be a really, really bad thing. So, she goes off to confront them about that, which is like, when was that? Was that back in season 3 that happened? Or was that season 2? When she ran her own, Proctor was kind of preoccupied. I forgot what happened, but she kind of took over the business for a while and she started making stupid mistakes, getting in business with other people she shouldn't have. It's like, your past mistakes should have those situations ended pretty terribly with her and her uncle almost getting killed. It's like, those situations should have told you not to go off and do stuff like this on your own, but you did it again anyway. But, the situation, she went to Hood to ask him for help, but he was kind of like, no, just leave me alone. But basically, she went there and handled the situation herself, and granted, it wasn't handled well because they kind of beat the crap out of her. It's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And at one point, they were going to feed her to a dog that was had been starved. Like, they were basically going to push her face down and let it rip her face off. It was like crazy savage dog. But basically, she got away from one of the guys, and he ended up, I forgot if she actually pushed him or where he fell, but the dog went towards his throat, started biting at his neck, and I was just like, oh my God. And then that was in itself brutal, but then he pulls his gun out and he's about to hit her, shoot her. Hood just pops. I was like, okay, I was crossing my fingers. I was like, please show up, Hood, please show up. He showed up and he brought one of those, I don't even know what they're called, they're little sickle things. He brought one down in the guy's hand and it split in half like that. I was just like, oh my God. I love how he had to grab his hand and slide it back together, to hold it together. I was just like, wow. And, in a confrontation, Hood got shot. That's what she went to the hospital for, not to get checked up on herself, but just so she could steal some stuff to patch him up while she was at it. And that led to blood getting in her seat, which points Brock towards him. But Kurt's kind of on his side, like, the sheriff, he wouldn't do something like that, but Brock's still unsure, because he still thinks of Hood as a suspect, especially now that her blood was in his car. This whole situation brought up some very interesting things, because at one point he went to Carrie, and he found out that Carrie is still looking for Job, and that he apologized to her, and she's like, what for? He's like, everything that's happened to her life since he came into it, because him coming to Banshee, tracking her down, like a long domino effect of stuff happening. Not just to her, neither to everyone in Banshee. People's lives turned upside down. I doubt there's anyone that came out of this necessarily, good, since Hood came to that. Maybe Brock, he is sheriff now because he was supposed to be the sheriff in the first place until they brought Hood in. That was kind of the original mayor from, season 1. That was his, plan to deal with Proctor, because literally every other sheriff brought in was kind of under Proctor's pay. So that was that. But, he's the only one I feel like kind of came out on top. I mean, granted, he lost his friends, fellow deputies, Siobhan and Emmett. So it's like coming out on top, not really the best terms. Even have Sugar bringing it up to Hood, because it's like, oh, you going out of way solving Rebecca's murder, so you must owe her a big one. But I feel like you probably owe more to Job, which, something something that came up. It's like, we never actually get to see too much of their past. We get a little bit of Carrie / Anna's. We get a little bit of Hood's. Have we? I'm trying to remember. Was there ever a moment you actually got a look at Job's past? Like, I think I remember there being an episode where you actually see when Job and Hood met, but it's like you don't really get to see that whole relationship, you know? So it's like no telling what exactly went down. And I mean, the biggest part, and since I'm talking about it, the biggest part is finding out Job is still alive. He is being held by someone. He's like got a beard and everything, and it's just like he looks rough, dude. I already knew this ahead of time because I was looking up, pictures for, thumbnails for these, and for last week's episode, because I look up and I type in list of Banshee episodes. That's how I look up the thumbnails for all my videos. And I end up seeing that like the third episode, next week's episode, is named Job. So I was like, okay, so that kind of spoiled it for me. But nevertheless, it's still, I mean, because that could have literally been interpreted anyway. That could literally be them being like, oh yeah, here's Job and Hood's past a little bit more. Like it could have literally been anything like that. But still, I was like, oh, that means Job's alive. Okay. Which I'm glad, because hands down, I would love to say Job is hands down one of my favorite characters. I love just the way he talks. Especially, to me, out of any relationship, it's his and Sugar's relationship that I love the most. I just love their back and forth, especially in the earlier season. Just that relationship, I love it. But we also had, essentially, we find out that we see a little bit of it ourselves. We heard about it last episode, but we see it this episode that there's that DA that's in Proctor's pocket. So essentially, there were these guys that they don't work for Proctor, they work for Calvin, who in fact works with Proctor. So kind of by proxy, they work for Proctor. And basically, them and his director were filming nasty stuff. Some very grotesque stuff. And basically, Proctor had the DA let them go. The DA is like, but I should at least try some of these cases, because me letting all these people go is, people are going to catch on. And he's like, don't worry about that. Let me deal with that. So he ended up letting them go, and we get to see, how Carrie gets, towards these guys, because essentially she was talking to Kurt, and he's like, well, goodbye, Mrs. Hopewell, and he left a file on the trunk of their car, and it was one of the director. So that's how Carrie, kind of, it helps with her whole vigilanteism. She, I guess that's how she's venting with dealing with all that she's going through. And it's kind of interesting that Kurt is kind of her inside man with that situation. I find it I don't know, it's very interesting seeing, I guess that's the only thing that brings her peace anymore. It's just, doing what she's doing. Because, in her therapy session, it is kind of messed up. I didn't kind of bring it up last episode. I'll bring it up this one. But, the fact is that her kids were taken from her in a situation she couldn't control. It's not like she was purposely, granted, yes, she was, she got in trouble for being involved with more criminal activities. That's why the kids were taken from her. But it's like she was kidnapped and forced in that situation. Yes, but granted, we know that she was actually trying to rob them. So it's kind of her own fault at the beginning. But still, that's, for us to know and, them to know, but not, it's the inside group, Joe, Hood, and Sugar to know, but not everyone else. So, but, it's kind of, she's like, basically, like, who the hell do I have to talk to get my kids back? So, and since I'm bringing it up, we find out that Dava actually visited Hood, in that period of time. Granted, she didn't tell Carrie that. She's like, basically, Hood said the reason why she probably didn't tell you is because she knew that you would want to come too. And just seeing him like that, it's like, I mean, the way he is now, he's kind of got a mission in mind, solving Rebecca's murder. And, he's a little, shaven up. He looks a lot better than he was before. So. And we also have in this episode Proctor killing the guy Rebecca was sleeping with, because he found out because Hood was investigating him and kind of brought that information back to Kai, because him and Kai are kind of working together on solving this, which is part of it is because even he's like, what do I do when I find out that it was you that killed her? Because it legitimately seems like it easily could have been Proctor who killed her. Apparently he set her up in a new office, like a year ago, gave her kind of her own office and everything, kind of, rising her up into business. But essentially Proctor ended up killing her boyfriend, which comes as no surprise, because we saw what happened when he found out about Hood and Rebecca. He literally he was yelling at Rebecca was going to kick her out. Plus, he got into a fist fight with Hood on it. Well, not just a fist fight. There was a lot of phones and staplers used in that fight. But the reason why I'm able to say that is because I recently went back and rewatched all of the first season. But also, Jason, he ended up killing Jason in the middle of them having sex. Which to me, I'm going to be blunt with you, I always felt like that their relationship, Proctor and Rebecca's, was going to turn into some weird stuff, incestual. You kind of got to look at it because she kissed Proctor on the lips. I don't know, that was just, a family thing. Not trying to, bash anyone, but just, legitimately, I always thought it was going to come down to that because it seemed like they were tilting towards that weird relationship. I mean, whether that actually did happen or not, because the way he's also sensitive about all the people she'll have sex with. I mean, as an uncle, it's like, okay, you don't want to think about what your niece is doing, but at the same time, going out of your way to killing the guys just for having sex with her, it's like, come on, there's got to be something more to it than that. So it makes you wonder, did something happen between them in that time period? And the very last little bit we got to see was, her kind of a little out of it with tape on her mouth being carried away. So, like I said, it still breaks my heart that she's dead. Every time you see freaking crime scene photos of that, it just breaks my heart more and more. It's like, why did they do that to that character, dude? That was just so brutal. It's like, I don't know, man. Because I don't think you even got to look at any of the other two victims. It's literally only Rebecca that you've seen photos of, I think, so. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.